It's interesting, isn't it, that we all come together at the end of a week that could have been filled with trauma, could have been filled with blessings. And whatever happens, we come back together here at the end of the week or the beginning of the week, and we praise God. And it really is an amazing thing. And I just really feel God's Spirit here this morning. It's really, really special. My mind went back when I was doing this. We were talking about this series of talks about people from all sorts of walks of life, whether they're famous or not famous, and things that they do for God or things that have happened in their lives that were pertaining to God. And I was thinking about a time, going back probably about 1971, 72, and I was a keeper at a big zoo. There it is now, but it was only a little zoo then, in Twycross in Leicestershire, right in the corner of Leicestershire. And I had a rare Saturday off, and I was sitting in the front room with a friend of mine. His name was Fred Knight. That's got nothing to do with the story, by the way. And we were just having a chat. And we were half watching the television. When the television's on and you're half watching what's going on, but you're really having a chat as well. And there was a report of a really bad storm off the Welsh coast. And a friend of ours who lived in the same village, his name was Ron Tubb, that again has nothing to do with the story. He had a boat that was moored at Portmadig, on the Welsh coast. And as they talked about this storm, and it showed, the usual pictures of devastation up and down the coast, I said to Fred, we can have a bit of a laugh here. We'll ring Ron and we'll maybe have him on about his boat. So, and please excuse the Welsh accent, by the way. I rang Fred up and I said, hello, is that Mr. Tubb? This is the Coast Guard here at Portmadig. There's been a terrible, terrible storm and your boat's been washed up on the shore in little pieces. So Ron said, oh no, he said, is it really damaged? I said, oh, it's terrible, terrible. It's in a right mess. It's like little bits of balsa all over the beach. He said, I'm coming down. So he put the phone down before I could say anything else. And I put the phone down and I said to Fred, I said, we better stop him from going down to Wales because he's on his way down to Wales. So we got into my car, we drove up. He lived at the other side of the village, and he lived up this long drive. It was about half a mile at the top of the drive, but by the time we had got to the bottom of the drive, Ron was at the bottom of the drive in his car. He rolled his window down and he said, I'll make you a cup of tea, lads. I've got to go down to Wales because there's been an accident with a boat. And I went, oh, that's terrible, terrible. So he said, I'll kill you. I said, but Fred, your boat's okay. The reason why I kind of thought about that story was that week, just after that, my life took a really strange turn. The lady I was married to at the time had a knock on the door from Jehovah's Witnesses. And it changed the course of my life absolutely dramatically forever. It put a great strain on the family. She became a witness, and the rest is history. So up until that time, I was kind of like very anti-God. I'd been brought up a Catholic, went to a Catholic school. So everything that I saw about God was oppressive. It was horrible. It was kind of nasty. And that just built up my resentment, if you like, for God. It was years and years later, I was living down in Broadstairs in Kent. And God kind of sometimes maneuvers you into a position where you can maybe be more receptive to his word. And I think that's what happened to me. I was living in Broadstairs. I had a chain of public houses. I was as far away from God as you could ever think that I could be. My partner at the time, she came in. She had been down to this mother and toddler group at the Baptist Church in Broadstairs, and she said, there's an Alpha course going on at the church. You enjoy a discussion, and we've said that we're going to spend a bit more time together, and it was going to be a Thursday. Well, this is on a Thursday night. Why don't we go along there? There's food on, and we'll have a little bit of a meal with everybody, and we'll have a discussion. So I went along to this Alpha group. There was about 30 people in the church hall, and we split up into little groups, and we were eating. And then we went off into discussion groups. And I was still quite resentful. In this group, people would move away from the group that I was in because I was so horrible. But gradually, as we went through, I became quite pally with a police sergeant from Margate, and it got about halfway through the Alpha course, and I was about to pack it in. I thought, I've had enough of this. And this lad, he said to me, he said, well, I've got to come along to this Alpha course because my girlfriend and I plan on getting married in church, and it's one of the conditions that to get married in church, I've got to come on an Alpha course to see what Christians believe in. So he said, and if you stop coming, he said, oh, it'll be so boring. He said, well, why don't you just come along to the end of the course, he said, and then I can get married. And I went, oh, all right then. So I continued to go along on the Alpha course. And then we came to the away weekend, and it was in a big hotel that was owned by Christians. And I went in, and the girl on the reception, I said, there's an Alpha away weekend here. She said, yes. She said, if you go into that room down there. She said, but I'm sick and tired of this. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, they've made us come in on our days off to look after this Alpha course. She said, none of us are Christians. She said, and it's absolutely terrible. She said, they've made us come in and pray in the morning about this Alpha course. I said, oh, really bad. I said, are they paying you any extra for coming in? She said, well, no, she said. I said, that's wrong. I ended up leading a strike in the hotel on the Alpha away weekend. So we came to the end of the Alpha course, and I thought, that's me. I'm finished with the God thing. I've done enough in my life to do the God thing. And one of the pastors in the church at the time, he said to me, why don't you come along to the next Alpha course? I said, you're joking. I said, I've had enough of it. He said, no, he said, come along. He said, because it kind of helps with the discussion. Come along. I said, well, do I have to toe the party line? He said, no. He said, just come along. He said, and just be what you've been in the first one. So I said, yeah, that's fantastic. I said, okay, I might come along for the first couple of weeks. So I did. I came to the end of that Alpha course, still nowhere near being a Christian. And he said to me, we've got another Alpha course starting in a couple of months' time. He said, will you come along and lead a group? And I went, but I'm not a Christian. And he said, I think by then you probably will be. So I thought, this isn't going to happen. Anyway, they had this big kind of get-together of Christians from lots of churches on the beach in Broadstairs. And some people get a road to Damascus job, don't they? Well, my road to Damascus job seemed to be the length of Britain. It took a long time, but when it did happen, wham, did it hit me. And my whole life changed. And that was at a time when everything was fine in my life. It wasn't that I needed it. It wasn't that, but I had been taken to that place in Broadstairs, away from a lot of my friends, a lot of away from relatives. So there was no influences in me to just take me away from that direction. I ended up 6 or 7 months later leading Alpha in church, and it was absolutely amazing that so many people during that time period became Christians. God really blessed me, and it was just amazing, being used as a tool, as a little bit of a tool in God's purpose. I've prepared a number of questions because I've got a little panel that you might enjoy talking to. And I had a number of questions, and I'm not going to use the questions because when I was coming in the car, I was kind of praying, and I thought there's something different going to happen during this. So can I invite my panel up? That's why we've got all these empty seats, and then we'll have a chat. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Can I give you that to put on the mic stand? Yeah. We're trying to socially distance at the same time, as you can see.
I think it's broken. Nearly there. Still needs a strong light, you see. There you go.
There you go. Excellent. Slot in the end.
Oh, sorry. Hold that minute.
I never had this problem when I was working for the BBC.
Right.
Oh, we are back a bit.
Oh yeah, there's more
Balance.
through there.
It's got a mind of its own.
I think we need a new one.
Brilliant.
I think you do.
A big hammer.
You just hold it, Ken.
I'll pass it along.
Yeah, that'll work.
Go away.
It's,
Is it coming through there? Hello? No. No.
Turn it on.
Is that better? No.
we'll just shout.
Trouble wearing these masks, you go deaf, don't you? That says on. That's on. 1, 2, 1, 2.
We can hear you better than off the mic, you know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Speak as you were before.
I will.
What?
Yeah.
You know, we say the Lord's Prayer, don't we? And we pray for, not that was the way that we should pray, because Jesus said, I want you to pray kind of this way, and it was a model to the way that we should pray. And when we pray for God's will to be done on earth as it is in heaven, do you think there's a difference then between God's will on earth and God's will in heaven as it stands right now? What do you think?
Are you asking me? I don't know.
Yeah?
I don't. Well, what would His will be in heaven? That everything's perfect.
Yeah.
We're not going to get perfection on earth, but we're going to get as close to it as we can, if we can.
Yeah.
Ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah. So it's kind of, it's a strange phenomenon, isn't it? Because
Yeah, it is.
yeah. Do you think of yourself as being a heavenly creature or an earthly creature? Or a bit of both? An earthly creature or a heavenly creature?
Who?
You. What do you think of yourself as being? Because we're thinking about a heavenly life, aren't we, in the future?
Yeah, I'm earthly, but I've got me eye on the heavenly bit, so
Yeah.
I'm heavenly one day. But yes, earthly.
What do you think, Martha?
Do you need this? Could you hear me? Some
Well,
now.
my iPhone's not
Some
working
now.
anyway. So, I don't know.
Hold the mic close.
I think the is, which is perfection and fairness, and that oneness, that being whole. But I think that's something that we can experience to a considerable degree on earth. I think there's a lot that we don't know. I think there's a lot of capacity in how we were made as humans that we don't, because of how we are, we can't latch into, but you see it in how some people have got skills in some area and some people have got the discernment, and I think there's a lot more to life than what we are aware of. And I think when you know Jesus and God, there's that contentment, that fullness. There's something deep inside that it's difficult to actually put into human words, but there is that sort of, in that respect, I think that's something heavenly.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean everything's going perfect in life. In fact, sometimes it's when things aren't going perfect, but you've just got
Yeah.
that contentness, that
Yeah.
extra something. I heard somebody refer to it about our DNA almost, and it's like the heavenly DNA, as it were, that's there.
So if you thought about that, would you think of yourself as more of an ambassador on earth for heaven, or?
I think it's, obviously I feel a lot of the time in it, but perhaps a channel more than
Yeah.
ambassador in that respect. Yeah.
Good. Excellent. What do you think, Ken?
What do I think? I think
Not a lot.
I think what we're told is to be in the world but not of the world, and I think being born again, that's obviously being born of the Spirit. Our heavenly place is secure, but we still have to work through things. So whilst it's a completed task, if you like, that we are sort of heavenly beings, we've still got to work through it. At this side of eternity, we are a work in progress, whereas the other side of eternity, we are pure and spotless before our Father in heaven. But He has made us that, you know. So He has done His work in each and every one of us, and He'll complete it. As I say, until the day of Jesus Christ, until He comes or calls, whichever way round it goes for us. Yeah. So be in the world, but not of the world.
Yeah. Good point. So when you're looking around at the world and the way that it is, do you become despondent, Anne? Does it make you despondent when you look at the bad things that happen in the world?
Yeah, some things do. I mean, we always read the bad news, don't we? There's loads of it in the paper. And yeah, there is. I feel like for the future, for young people and children now, as they are growing up in this world. But then, you know, you look to Jesus, you can see there's hope. But not everybody has that hope, and that's what you want for people, don't you? You want them to know Jesus as you do, because then they've got that capacity to stand against all the evil that is in the world. I mean, I always think about Lauren. You know, when she grows older, what's it going to be like, the world then? You know, it's bad enough now, and what we can do, though, we can pray, of course, and we can commit people to the Lord and ask that He will be their protection. But I'm not a despondent person anyway, which, thank you, Lord, for giving me that. I'm mostly cheerful. So, you know, that's a gift, I think. God keeps me cheerful. But there's a lot to get down about. But we've got an amazing God, and we just want to share Him, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Martha, how does it make you feel when you see a disaster in the world, and somebody maybe says to you, why doesn't God do something about this?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, isn't it? And why does bad things happen? But I always look to as it were, the root cause of it, and that, you know, I believe that God doesn't cause those to happen. It's a lot of what we've done as mankind. You know, if they build a big city in America on what is known to be a rift, and there's an earthquake, well, you know, in effect, somebody, whether consciously or not, has done that risk assessment, if you like, or has ignored the facts and done that. So things like is an outworking of it, really. I think it's fascinating that in the early days of mankind, people lived to hundreds of years old, you know, and obviously then gradually, you know, disease, whatever, came into the world. But even in what we've been going through at the moment, it's amazing to see that the creation, nature, is more lovely than what it's been for a long time in that respect. So that side gives me hope against the despondency. In
Good.
that respect.
Yeah, good point. What do you think, Ken?
I just think basically when people don't believe in God, they'll believe in any old thing, and you know, and they'll do it, and you know, the biggest thing is to please oneself these days, instead of pleasing God. The first step is to please God and then look out for others. Jesus makes that quite clear, doesn't he? Love God and love your neighbour as yourself, and that's the basis for all of it. The fact that there is a lot of evil in the world is because it's brought about by mankind and not about by God, and it really gets up my nose when people say, why did God let this happen? Well, God didn't let this happen. Mankind had put his finger in the pie, as it were, initially to cause these things to happen. You know, if you look at, say, a country like Bangladesh, which is readily flooded over. It is a low-lying country anyway, but then you see that the foothills in the Himalaya, they've cut down all the trees which would hold back the water, so whenever there's those rains, that water has come sloshing straight down instead of being held back. You know, and that's man's fault, but everybody says, oh no, it's a catastrophe, and a lot of them are Muslims, and they're saying, why is God punishing us? They're not. It's not, because somebody's profiteered by what's gone on upstream, basically. And that's sort of tantamount in many different ways. You know, deforestation in Brazil, and, you know, the Amazon, really, really terrible things going on. But it's all down to profit at the end of the day.
Yeah, okay. So God's given us a free will to do what we want to do. Have you ever felt in your life that you'd rather do your will than do God's will? Martha, you've got the microphone.
Oh yes, I didn't pass it on.
Yes, would you like?
Yeah, please.
Well, I think perhaps I'd like to go back to my sort of journey on that, as to how I became a Christian. I think my growing awareness about Christianity was over a period of years, and that fitted in with me growing up. And I got to about sixth form, and one then was obviously encouraged to do well, and so many people were taken out after assembly and had a special talk. I guess you couldn't do this nowadays, because in a way that's been a bit discriminatory, isn't it? And basically what was said was, you're the group of people who we definitely think will be able to go to university, and therefore we want to, as it were, give you a head start, get thinking about it, as soon as the forms come out, start applying. And that, in a way, was the way to go. And so I thought about that and I looked into that. So that would have been doing my will, or doing the set pattern of life. But at the same time, I felt uneasy about it, that inner thing. I felt more and more uneasy about it, and I thought, well, why do I? Because I'm not particularly a rebel. but there's this sort of which is my will and which isn't my will thing. And it was through that I said, well, I'm not sure, so I'll just wait a little while if I like. There's plenty of time, thank you very much. And I actually got hauled in front of the deputy headmaster, I think it was, or the head of sixth form. He questioned me and said, you know, why aren't you doing this? It's not a problem, you can change your mind, you don't have to go, but, you know, go with the flow, do, you know, what was. Anyway, I continued to have this wrestle between what was my will, what was God's will, what was the right thing to do. And one night at home in bed, I sort of worked out what's the pattern of life. You know, what's the right pattern to do? And this was, well, yes, you go to school, you get an education, there's nothing wrong with that, that's brilliant. You keep going, and at that time it was very much, university was the route to go if you could go. It didn't seem to be spread about the whatever other options might be best for you. So, okay then, so at the end of that I get a job, then maybe get a better job, and it was sort of a job for life ethos was still around in those days, so you sort of had to, you know, aim high to start with. And then eventually you come to the end of your working life, and then you grow old, and then you die, and then and I sort of stopped. It was as if there was a precipice there. I think, oh, well, what happens then? And I was a bit cross with myself because I thought, well, I know what happens then. You go to heaven, but it hadn't flowed naturally that way. And then the penny suddenly dropped. Well, it's not right to go my way in life, and then at the end to just come right and get that final thing right with God and go to heaven. That it was really, that's the time was to make a decision now to follow God, to give my life to Jesus, and that everything just suddenly, something clicked, and I had a little cry, and so that was the turning point for me between my will or God's will, and then the conflict sort of rose.
Good, yeah. Do you think that at any time you resented that? No.
I honestly can't say.
Good,
I'm
yeah.
not saying life's been a bed of roses all the time.
Yeah.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a bit, going back, you think about resentment in your life and the way that you feel about things. I had the opportunity of going and working on a project with mountain gorillas in Africa. And I was on the verge of doing it, but my wife said to me that she didn't want to go to Africa. And for years I felt a lot of resentment about that. And sometimes the way that life twists and turns, you can feel that, can't you? You can feel, yeah. But I think that's really interesting that you felt that way. The thought process went through, because when God's motivating you, it doesn't say that he stops you from thinking. Sometimes logic comes into it as well, and sometimes a lot of other things. Yeah. What do you think, Anne?
Well, I'd have to go back as well to, my childhood. I was brought up in a Christian home from when I was about 5. Sorry, I've got to hold it. And I think as I got into my teenage years, I did resent, which felt like there were certain things I wasn't allowed to do, or places to go, or things like that. And I was a bit of a rebel then, I suppose. And I did. I thought it was restrictive, and it's not, coming to Jesus, but the penny didn't drop for a long time. And when we got married, because Ken was in the army, and he'd been brought up as a Christian. We've both given our hearts to Jesus as youngsters or teenagers. You were, weren't you? And anyway, when we moved, we just did our own thing. We didn't find a church, and we went away from the Lord for about 18 years, was it?
Yeah.
But even so, throughout my life, I think I've known God was real, but I didn't do anything about it. And it's coming to that realization that, you know, what's going to happen at the end if I don't do something. But there's no doubt about it. Life can be really good when you're just enjoying yourself and you think everything's going fine. You know, the devil, it don't give you a miserable life, does he? He offers you these things. And and every time I've sort of ignored that voice, you know, and I haven't listened to the Lord, it's always caused problems. But thankfully, you know, I eventually came to that place where one of our daughters had gone to a church with a friend and come back, and she was saying that they were all jumping up and down and clapping and that. It reminded me of my childhood then. The happy clappers. But Ken went first to the church, didn't you? But it was a bit OTT.
Frightened the life out of me.
Yeah. So then we went to an Elim church in Reading, this was, and you know, when I walked in, it was just like, I'm home. It was like coming home. It was absolutely marvellous, you know, and from then on, it was just the Lord, you know, he never leaves you, does he? Whatever you do, whatever you get up to, he's always there, just like the prodigal, waiting for you to come back. And I never resented anything after that. But, you know, you still have your own thoughts, but you want his guidance always. But like you say, he gives you a mind of your own to use, but you've got to use that sensibly and with his guidance.
Very good.
But but that was wonderful. Just walking into that church, and it just felt like I've come home.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like your spirit coming with God's spirit and feeling,
after all that time, you know, it was just marvelous,
Mm.
And it didn't take like the gifts of the spirit away or anything as well. Like, it was just there. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Very good. Ken, would you change anything through your life?
Yeah, I wouldn't have gone into backsliding.
Yeah.
Like Anne said, we were in the army and we backslidden, and we just got on. We had a good enough life, wasn't it? It was quite enjoyable and things were okay. But it's like when we came back from abroad. Well, when I was first there, I was Lance Corporal, and I used to get the mickey taken out of us, and I had never had anywhere for fellowship. This is not a moan, it's my fault, I should have sorted it out. But I fell away, we fell away. And then when we came back to the UK, to Reading, I was thinking and praying, and I was saying to God, you know, I'll come back to church, I'll come back to you when I'm 40 and I've retired from the army. I'm not taking all that battering again, you know. And it's like we went into this Elim church, and had that feeling. I didn't, but after trying this ultra happy clap, it was horrible. It was all over me, putting their hands on me and everything. And I went in, and the pastor wasn't speaking this night, and this other fellow was speaking. And please don't think I'm being critical, because
you wouldn't do that, would you?
No, but it wasn't much of a sermon or anything like that. But here's the text he used, with John 15 verse 16, you know. You didn't choose me, I chose you to go and bear fruit, little lass. And I'd been arguing with God, talking with God, if you like, in that way, saying, look, I'm going to leave it until I finish with the army, and then, you know, I'll be plain sailing. Well, blow me, that struck me like a thunderbolt, and I suddenly realised how arrogant I'd been in sort of saying to God, I'll stipulate the time, I'll do this. And so anyway, we had a lovely 6 months. We were getting established in the church and everything like that. A real good call on our lives, wasn't it then?
Yeah.
and blow me, the Falkland Wars blew up. And then it got near the end, and they said, oh, they want somebody to go out there. And I said, well, I can't. I was talking to people and saying, well, why should God want me to go out to the Falklands when I've just come back to him? I need to get sort of established in the church and, learn a few things. And the next thing, I'm on the aeroplane down to the Falklands. And I got down there and I thought, well, this time I'm not going to make any, I'm going to find a fellowship and stick with it, And I thought, well, it won't be so bad because I'm a staff sergeant now, so I'll have my own room and everything like that. But of course it wasn't like that, was it? We went on one of these landing ship logistics, it's a Bedivere or something like that. And I was stuck in a mess with about 18 others. So where I fell from grace, as it were, where I backslid in a barrack room situation, I found myself within 6 months of coming back to the Lord, back in that barrack room situation. And I had to witness amongst all that lot again. And I thought, oh, blimey. So, but I just put it all in God's hands. I carried on as I would have done if I'd have been at home, reading my Bible and praying and everything like that. I got taken off that ship after about 4 weeks and living in a hut at the bottom of somebody's garden. And then a room came about another 4 weeks after that, came to in the deanery, because the vicar there was a born-again Christian, Harry Bagnall. He's dead now, but he was quite a remarkable man. And so I lived in the deanery for the rest of my time. Military-wise, it couldn't have gone better, because I thought, well, I'm a staff sergeant, that'll be me finished as a staff sergeant. When I come back, they even promoted me to WO2. So, that gave us a bit more pension as well. So, God's really blessed us, and he put me back to where my weakness was. That was the amazing thing. And it was as though I had to overcome that before I could move on in the journey. Sorry.
It's all right. Do you think that happens, that if you don't get over a stumbling block, that God brings you back around again to face it? Do you think that happens, Anne?
Yes, I do. I can't say it's happened to me, but it certainly happened to Ken. I've seen it, and that is part of his testimony.
Yeah.
And also God sometimes uses somebody else instead. Although that's a different situation. If it's personal to you, but yes.
Yeah, it happens a lot. So have you ever had a disagreement with God?
Yeah, I think when you've lost people dear to you, you wonder why. Like my dad, he was well established. They were building a new church, and my dad, just before they moved into the building they'd got, after years of saving and meeting in a school hall, he had a heart attack. The day he retired, he was 63, and he died. And, my mum was sort of puzzled. She couldn't understand what was going on, and I felt resentful then towards God, and it was a horrible time.
Yeah.
Shock, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But even then, I think God was starting to work in my heart then.
Yeah.
It's,
Martha, have you had a disagreement with God ever?
I think perhaps disagreement is quite a strong word, but I think perhaps I've had do I have to go through this sort of situation? Maybe as if you've come across, I don't like sort of conflict or any sort of relationship difficulties, and sometimes they happen, don't they? Or you sort of, it affects you. And so I sort of say, no, please, I don't want to have to cope with this. So then it's a case of much of God's grace is sufficient for you, and we're not trying to cope with things in your own strength. that in that sort of thing. That's a little bit, isn't it? You'd like an easy life and everything to be nicey all the time, and so
Yeah.
you know, life isn't always like that, is it? But it can hopefully learn things and certainly need to keep growing in patience and kindness, and long way to go on with
Yeah.
lots of things. But it is a journey, isn't it?
It certainly is. I remember going back not so many years, I thought that I had it made. I was an elder in the church. I was doing a lot of stuff in church, working with people who had addictions and things like that. I had my own zoo that I owned, and it was kind of, and everything was kind of going along. I was married, very, very happy in the marriage, and the kids were all growing up quite nicely. The youngest one I was home educating, so I had enough time to be able to do that as well. And within a 2 or 3 month period, the zoo was gone, the marriage was gone, church was gone, and everything was wiped out like the rug being pulled from under you. I had a real battle with God then. But at the end of the day, it did make me stronger, and it made me realize that I was doing it on, what's that saying about pride being before a crash? I was proud, you know, and I didn't realize it, but I was proud. And when that happened, I realized then, you know, the pride, I wasn't proud in what God was doing. I was proud in what I was doing, and that was totally wrong. And God taught me a massive big lesson through that all. Yeah. This could go on forever, couldn't it? It's really brilliant. Thank you very much. I'll let you go and relax now, because you hadn't a clue what I was going to say. And what's more, neither did I. Before we finish, I've just got a feeling that there's maybe somebody here that really, really needs prayer. And it's maybe something that it might be a bit of a thing, isn't it, that when you come forward you need prayer or whatever. But Ken and Anna are over in that corner. If anybody would just like a prayer, it could be for anything, just go over there, out of the way, and just have a little bit of a socially distancing, of course. And anything else that, you know, talk to each other. The one thing that we've got at the moment is we've got this distancing, but we're not distant with each other, are we? We're close together. We're a close church family. And sometimes that the physical kind of thing is difficult. But, you know, if you need prayer, go to Anne and Ken. I'm sure you don't mind over in the corner. But I've just got a strong feeling that somebody just needs prayer for something, and I haven't got a clue what it is. Thank you.
Well, I can say it certainly. Lieber Gott, helfe meinen guten Freund Kenny und fasse ihn immer auf. Ist ein sehr guter Mann, ist der Beste.
Good. Brilliant.
That was saying that, dass wir in den Himmel kommen, in Himmel, that's heaven. Amen. And he looked after you, because he looked after me 4 times. I should have been dead by rights. Once at Scotch Corner, I'll tell you this, I won't stop long. Once at Scotch Corner and once at Gaza Lines in 1959, I was painting the windows 3-story high on a wooden ladder, treble ladder. Right. And the lads, I know they were joking, they said put paraffin around the bottom of the wooden ladder with some newspaper and they set the bloody ladder on fire. Oh. So I was panicking. I had to smash the window. I was 3-story high. Smash the window to get outside. If I would have fallen down, I would have been dead and gone. Yeah. You know. And then another time in Germany, 1945, my granny, Oma Boysdorf, we used to go to when the Americans or the Englander came over, bombing, we used to go to a shelter. Well, this certain time in Boysdorf, we missed the shelter, and the bomb hit them straight away, and all the people were dead. If we would have gone in there that certain time, would have been dead. So God up there looked after me at that time. And that was another time in Scotch Corner when I was picking some Germans up going back 25 years ago, and there was traffic jam, and there was 4 cars, so we stopped behind, and the wagon driver fell asleep, and he ran right in the back of us, and he chucked us all out. The car turned upside down. I got out the line.